Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing some of the recently declassified UFO files. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. What we're going to be analyzing today are recently declassified UFO files released by the Department of War. Now, they released a ton of information. They released a ton of files covering a lot of decades. So specifically what we're going to be looking at today are the Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 missions because of their historical significance. But we're going to be doing follow-up videos. There's so much more to cover, but this is where we're going to start. We're going to look at a few pictures. We're going to be looking at some transcripts by the astronauts while they're experiencing some strange phenomenon. I'm going to talk about the psychology of that. And then we're going to look at the body language of the astronauts in their press conferences after the Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 missions. All right, let's just jump right in. Now, the pictures we're going to look at right now are from the Apollo 12 mission. Now, I wanted to start here because what they talk about is so hard to wrap your head around. It's so fantastic. I wanted you to see some pictures of things that were actually caught by astronauts, by NASA, during the Apollo 12 mission. I want you to keep in mind that the Apollo 12 mission was 1969. Now, what they've released here is a magnified version of a phenomenon that was observed in these pictures. Now, you can see the actual size is this small box back here, and it's magnified to this large box here. And what we are seeing, to me, is absolutely remarkable, because if you have ever heard astronauts talk about what it looks like to be on the moon, they talk about pitch black, that you can't see anything, that you can't even see the stars. And so for there to be something this visible, something so unusual, is just remarkable to me. We're going to just scroll through these pictures, and then we're going to get into what they say they saw. But to me, this is just absolutely remarkable. This is not at all what I expected to be released. Now, here's another picture that is somewhat less fantastic than the one we just saw, but there are also visual phenomena that are occurring. And the way that these are described, it sounds like they're blinking or pulsing, because we're going to hear the astronauts actually describing some of what they saw. And now as we get to this, you can see this one is a little bit more colorful, and these have moved around a bit. And this one right here is incredibly striking to me. You see three distinct lights on here. This isn't a reflection. These aren't planets. It's just remarkable to me that they are now releasing this. And obviously, if these were things that could easily be explained away, they would have done it. These wouldn't be classified. These are classified for a reason, or they have been. And to me, that is just absolutely remarkable, far beyond anything that I anticipated being released in this. And then you see a picture like this with 5 different areas that they're magnifying. It's really almost hard to wrap your mind around the fact that this is real. This is something that NASA has had, that the government has had for decades. This was 1969. It's not like that they had special effects that they could be creating at the time that would look anything like this. Area 5 in particular stands out as just absolutely remarkable to me. But as I said, this isn't just to get my reactions on this. We're going to go into what the astronauts actually described, but I wanted you to get a really good look at all of these first. Now, as far away as these are and as hard as these are to see, you're going to see the astronauts saw things much more clearly. They saw things that were much closer. So this isn't just going to be them describing a far-off dot that they saw. They saw some incredible phenomena. So what we're going to do next is to go and look at what Apollo 11 described. Now, these were from Apollo 12. These pictures are not from Apollo 11, but they definitely experienced unusual phenomenon on Apollo 11 as well. So let's jump to that right now. So what we're going to be looking at now is the Apollo 11 technical crew debriefing. I'm not going to read the entire thing because it's very long, but we're going to look at the highlights. We're going to look at what stands out and what's important. And we're also going to look at the psychology of what they could have been experiencing. And as it says, July 31st, 1969, the pictures you just saw were from November of the same year, so several months later. So what we're going to be reading are statements made by Michael Collins, Neil Armstrong, and Buzz Aldrin. Now, this starts out with Michael Collins talking about getting in the right frame of mind to be on the moon, to try to be relaxed, to try to enjoy yourself as much as you can. So after they talk about getting in the right frame of mind, Buzz Aldrin states, the first unusual thing we saw, I guess, was one day out or something pretty close to the moon. So this would have been after they had been in space for a day. It had a sizable dimension to it, so we put the binocular on it. Now, Collins tends to be a little bit more hesitant with the way that he speaks than Buzz Aldrin. You see this during the press conference as well. Collins asks, how did we see this thing? Did we just look out the window and there it was? Buzz Aldrin replies, yes. And we weren't sure, but what it might be is the SIVB. Now, what that's in reference to is the Saturn module. So in other words, what helps launch the shuttle to the moon. So what they're saying is that maybe what they were seeing is the leftover parts of the Saturn module. We called the ground and were told that the SIVB was 6,000 miles away. We had a problem with the high gain about this time, didn't we? And Collins replies, there was something. We felt a bump, or maybe I just imagined it. As I said, Collins tends to be a little bit more hesitant than Buzz Aldrin when it comes to making statements like this. But Armstrong says, He was wondering whether the MESA had come off. And Collins replied, I don't guess we felt anything. Aldrin replies, of course, we were seeing all sorts of little objects going by at the various dumps, and then we happened to see this one brighter object going by. We couldn't think of anything else it could be other than the SIVB. We looked at it through the monocular, and it seemed to have a bit of an L shape to it. Now, the reason that this is significant is that they're trying to explain away what this is. These people are natural skeptics. They are scientists. They are going to ask questions. If they see something they don't recognize, they're not immediately going to go, okay, this is some sort of alien life or some sort of spaceship or something like that. They're going to go, okay, what logical reason can we explain this away? And they're trying to, but they can't. So after Aldrin said that it had a bit of an L shape to it, Armstrong replied, like an open suitcase. Aldrin went on to say, we were in PTC at the time, so each one of us had a chance to take a look at this, and it certainly seemed to be in our vicinity and of a very sizable dimension. So something close and something big. Armstrong then stated, we should say that it was right at the limit of the resolution of the eye. It was very difficult to tell just what shape it was, and there was no way to tell the size without knowing the range, or the range without knowing the size. So there continues to be some confusion about what it is that they were looking at, but it sounds like it had an L shape, but it was a little bit hard to see. Aldrin then stated, so then I got down to the LEB and started looking for it in the optics. We were grossly misled because with the sextant off focus, what we saw appeared to be a cylinder. And then Armstrong said, or really 2 rings. Aldrin replied, yes. Armstrong said 2 rings, 2 connected rings. And then Collins actually is speaking his mind more and clarifying something. He says, no, it looked like a hollow cylinder to me. It didn't look like 2 connected rings. You could see this thing tumbling, and when it came around end on, you could look right down its guts. It was a hollow cylinder. But then you could change the focus of the sextant, and it would be replaced by this open book shape. It was really weird. Now, that's a very hard visual to make sense of. So one of them thought that it was 2 connected rings. Collins seems to think that it was some sort of tube that you could look down, but that from another angle, it looked like an open book or like an L shape. Just an incredibly strange thing to wrap your mind around. But the psychology of this is important because what we have is people disagreeing with each other. Everybody experienced similar phenomena, but nobody can agree. So what we're not seeing is the leader, so to speak, saying, hey, I saw this, and other people going along. There's not the social psychology of groupthink here. These are actually minds that are scientifically minded that are disagreeing about what they saw. So that actually makes it more valid. That gives more validity to what it is that they observe. This is not one person experiencing something and people projecting onto it. This is all people with different perspectives, and that's extremely important when it comes to this appearing to be a valid phenomenon. And then Aldrin says, I guess there's not too much more to say about it other than it wasn't a cylinder. And then Collins replies, it was during the period when we thought it was a cylinder that we inquired about the SIVB, and we'd almost convinced ourselves that that's what it had to be. Because if you think about these lunar modules, I mean, you think about something that launches them off that might be cylindrical, but they're looking at it and going, well, it really can't be that. But we don't have any more conclusions than that really. The fact that we didn't see it much past this one time period, we really don't have a conclusion as to what it might be, how big it was, or how far away it was. It was something that wasn't part of our urine dump. We're pretty sure of that. So they continue to try to make sense of what it is that they saw, but they're not able to come to any firm conclusions. Now, if we continue to go down, Aldrin states, the other observation that I made accumulated gradually. I don't know whether I saw it the first night, but I'm sure I saw it the second night. I was trying to go to sleep with all the lights out, so you would have been in absolutely pitch black at that point in time. I observed what I thought were little flashes inside the cabin. So this was actually inside their cabin. This was not outside. This would have been close to him. Spaced a couple of minutes apart, and I didn't think too much about it other than to note it in my mind that they continued to be there. I couldn't explain why my eye would see these flashes. During Trans-Earth Coast, we had more time and I devoted more opportunity to investigating what this could have been. It was at that point that I was able to observe on 2 different occasions that instead of observing just one flash, I could see double flashes at points separated by maybe a foot. At other times, I could see a line with no direction of motion, and the only thing that comes to my mind is that this is some sort of penetration. At least that's my guess, without much to support it. Some penetration of some object into the spacecraft that caused an emission as it enters the cabin itself. Sometimes it was one flash on entering, possibly departing from an entirely different part of the cabin outside of the field of view. The double flashes appeared to have an entry and then an impact on something such as these struts. So he's talking about these little teeny weird flashes of light that would happen in the dark, and they would occur about a foot apart. Just unbelievable. For a while, I thought it might have been some static electricity because I was also able, in moving my hand up and down the sleep restraint, to generate very small sparks of static electricity. but there was a definite difference between the two as I observed it more and more. Keep in mind, he is trying to scientifically disprove what he is experiencing. So he's creating static. He's trying to say, well, it isn't static. So he's eliminated static as a possible variable. I tried to correlate this with the direction of the sun. When you put the window shades up there and it's still a small amount of leakage, you can generally tell within 20 to 30 degrees of the direction of the sun. It seemed as though they were coming from that general direction. However, I really couldn't say if it was near enough evidence to support that these things were observable on this side of the spacecraft where the sun was. A little bit of evidence seemed to support this. I asked the others if they had seen these, and until about the last day, they hadn't. Sometimes a minute or two would go by, and then you would see the two within the spacecraft of 10 seconds. On an average, I'd say, just as a guess, it was maybe something like one a minute. Certainly more than enough to convince you that it wasn't an optical illusion. It did give you a rather funny feeling to contemplate that something was zapping through the cabin. There wasn't anything you could do about it. And then Armstrong says, it could be something like Buzz suggested, mainly a neutron or something of an atomic particle that would be in the visible spectrum. Now, keep in mind, this was all classified. So even though they're coming to the conclusions, maybe that there's a normal explanation for this, the government, NASA did not feel like this is something the public should know. So keep in mind, this is, even though they may have come to conclusions to say, I'm sure that's a natural phenomenon, for whatever reason, this has been classified for 50 plus years. What we're going to look at now is a little bit from the Apollo 11 press conference after their flight. They had come back. I believe they spent 3 weeks in isolation, and I'd analyzed this before. I talked about how their behavior is quite strange. There are times where they seem to be trying to soothe themselves. Their behavior is not what you would expect. Now, some people interpreted that they didn't go to the moon altogether. Some people interpreted that they saw something that they were uncomfortable with. We're going to watch a minute of them fielding a question when they're asking about something that they observed, and I just want you to see some of this body language because I think it's absolutely fascinating to now look at it through the lens of what they talked about during that transcript that we read.
I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may. When you were carrying out that incredible moonwalk, did you find that the surface was equally firm anywhere, or were there harder and softer spots that you could detect? And secondly, when you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
In rather flat regions, the footprint would penetrate.
I'm going to skip ahead to them talking about what they observed rather than them talking about their footprints, just so that this video isn't an hour long.
You cannot always tell just by looking at the terrain what the exact resistance will be as your foot sinks into a point of firm contact. So one must be quite cautious.
Now you're noticing all of them are now fidgeting with pins. There is a lot of discomfort in this room right now. All three of them look quite anxious and quite uncomfortable.
In moving around in this rough terrain.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were...
I want you to pay attention specifically to Neil Armstrong. He's in the middle. By the way, if you're not familiar, on the left is Buzz Aldrin. In the middle is Neil Armstrong. On the right is Michael Collins.
Period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
And you could hear the way he was talking. He started trailing off when he talks about what stars they could see. To me, this lends credence to the fact that they are being careful about what they discuss, what it is that they are talking about that they actually could see, and what they observed.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were a little bit...
And you can see, we looked at those pictures from Apollo 12. They were things that were clearly visible in the sky in the distance. Look at all of the hand-wringing, all of the discomfort from all three of them as they are talking about this, how you can't see anything from the surface of the moon. All three of them look quite uncomfortable discussing this.
I don't remember seeing any.
You hear that? Michael Collins says, I don't remember seeing any. Now watch what Neil Armstrong does.
Neil,
Immediately latches his fingers together. I mean, he is really holding on. Now, Buzz Aldrin's pretty consistent. He's just sitting there twisting his pin. But Michael Collins appears to be fairly uncomfortable, and then Neil Armstrong appears to be the most uncomfortable of the three.
you were a little bit concerned, you said, about stubbing your toe.
Now let's go on to the debrief from the Apollo 12 mission. And as I said earlier, the Apollo 12 mission was November of the same year as the Apollo 11 mission, so this would have just been a few months after. I'm going to start here with what I've highlighted. Roger, when you look at the AOT in the dark quadrant, you can see these lights, particles of light, flashes of light just seem to come from, in this case, I'm looking at quadrant 1, which is the left one. It's coming from behind me, the left, and they're just sailing off in space. I was thinking they're dropping from my water boiler, but it looks like some of those things are escaping the moon. They really haul out of here and just press off at the stars. Now, that's an absolutely wild description. It sounds like they're seeing similar but different phenomena to what was described on Apollo 11. Now, this is very long, so we're going to skip around a bit. Got sort of an interesting thing going on AGS right now. I didn't notice earlier, but it may be just because the lights are brighter now. I'm getting all 8s on flashes on the address, and the information registers at about 1/5 the brilliance of normal numbers. And it's pulsing every second. And then it says, Roger, Al. And this is referring to Al Bean. He is one of the astronauts. If I turn down the illumination level just a little bit, it's not noticeable. And then throughout this, there continues to be confusion about these pulsing lights. No one's able to entirely be able to make sense of what's going on. So they go on to continue to try to figure out what this pulsing light might be. Now, they conclude it's probably EMI, electromagnetic interference. But that doesn't seem to be an adequate explanation. And clearly, because they classified this afterwards, clearly NASA didn't think that was an adequate explanation either. Now let's look at a little bit of the press conference from Apollo 12. We're going to watch just a minute of it because, as I said before, we watched the whole thing, it would be far too long. In subsequent videos, I'm going to take a deeper dive into some of these press conferences again, but for now, we're just going to watch a little bit. Who you're looking at right here on the left is Al Bean, on the right is Dick Gordon.
Well, from a purely visual point, one of the things that was most noticeable to me is the fact that when everyone's returned from the moon, they've raved about how beautiful it looks from the Earth looks from the moon. And the pictures that they brought back, I never thought really established that. It looked like a nice blue Earth. And
I want you to watch Dick Gordon's body language because Al Bean, as he's speaking, he's shifting around a little bit, but Dick Gordon looks incredibly uncomfortable. We're seeing a lot of self-soothing, similar to what we saw with Apollo 11.
Well, from a purely visual point, one of the things that was most noticeable to me is that...
See, he's covering his mouth. We tend to associate that with trying not to say something, with almost reminding ourselves to keep our mouth shut. So to me, it's a very interesting pose for him right here.
In fact, when everyone's returned from the moon, they've raved about how beautiful it looks from...
You see, he's tapping his fingers, he's moving around. There's so much discomfort coming from Dick Gordon right now. And like I said, we'll watch more of this another time, but I at least wanted you to get a chance to see this.
The Earth looks from the moon. And the pictures that they brought back, I never thought really...
Now you'll see he just put on a fake smile. You see him do this. We do that when we want people to feel good, when we don't have an actual feeling, but we're trying to reflect a smile, so we're covering how we actually feel.
And the pictures that they brought back, I never thought really established that. It looked like a nice blue Earth and white Earth and green Earth and whatever else. But when you're up at the moon...
and then you saw him do it again.
White Earth and green Earth and whatever else. But when you're up at the moon, it's a little bit different. As we view the moon from the Earth, it's white and flat. It's quite pretty. When you get up at the moon and view the moon, then it's much the same. It's either white or concrete colored or gray or something like that, depending on the sun angle. But when you look at the Earth is those colors, but it kind of sparkles, and it's sort of an interesting...
And now you see Dick Gordon is backing up. He's literally creating physical distance. So as they're talking about this, he's getting uncomfortable.
It's quite a beautiful thing, and our pictures didn't capture it either. I don't know why. It just can't be done. The one thought I had about the moon that sticks in my mind is almost everything in the universe that we know of or think about seems to have some utilitarian function. And we were up there circling the moon, and I kept...
You see just so much discomfort coming from Dick Gordon. You see him moving his arms around. He just can't seem to sit still. And you have to think about how tough these people are, how difficult it would be to actually get on a spacecraft, the amount of training that they have. All of these things are so intense, and yet talking about this seems to be wildly uncomfortable for him, which is unusual given what his background is.
That sticks in my mind is almost everything in the universe that we know of or think about seems to have some utilitarian function. And we were up there circling the moon, and I kept wondering...
Now watch Al Bean's body language when he talks about everything else in the universe.
Is almost everything in the universe that we know of or think about seems to have some...
See, then there's some self-soothing there as well. They all would have experienced some strange phenomena when they're up there. As I said, you can look at those pictures from Apollo 12, the ones from the moon. Just absolutely astounding.
What the function of the moon was. It didn't appear to have any capability to support life as we know it. It didn't appear to be doing a lot for the Earth. We could probably...
And then you see Dick Gordon coughing after he says that.
Life as we know it. It didn't appear to be doing a lot for the Earth. we could probably live without the tides. Things would change, the balance would change.
All right, let's go and start to wrap things up here. Hopefully this is helping you better understand some of the new UFO files that have been released. I have so many to get through, and there is going to be a lot more where this came from. I plan to cover a lot more about these because I think there's a lot of very interesting information. For all of this from Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 to have been kept confidential means that they found that there was something significant about this. It wasn't just that they found a reflection of the spaceship off in the distance or something like that. There was a meaningful reason that they kept this classified. And I think what we're seeing is that it is almost hard to even comprehend what it is that we're observing in some of these pictures. Just really mind-blowing stuff, in my opinion. And to read what they went through in Apollo 11 and Apollo 12, and to have never heard about this before, I also think is really fascinating. I'm going to continue to analyze these. Apollo 17 is a wild mission when you read about some of what they experienced, but I didn't want to cover too much in this video just because I didn't want it to be too long, but I do plan to do a follow-up video about Apollo 17, and it's pretty mind-blowing. If there's anything specific you want me to analyze, please let me know. If there's anything you feel like I missed, I'd also like to hear about that. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.